Hello again, everyone. Tom Nagorski in the Cipher Brief virtual studio. Great to have you with us today for a conversation about the U.S. mission against the Houthis, the militant group in Yemen, supported for a long time by Iran, and a group that has caused havoc for the past couple of years with its attacks against global commerce and global shipping, in particular in the region. The United States launched a new mission against the Houthis just about a month ago. President Trump says the group has been, quote, decimated by what he called the relentless strikes. In private briefings, Pentagon and military officials have been a little less enthusiastic, but they do say they're having success, even if it's more limited than Mr. Trump's comments suggest. Our guest is General Frank McKenzie, former head of Central Command, the command that, by the way, is front and center in this operation. General, I have been struck, and I think you have been too, by initially, anyhow, there was so much attention paid to the signal fiasco over the leaked comments and all the rest about the strikes. It seems to me, but for what is a major U.S. military operation, it's not getting a ton of attention. And I'm not sure we really know, and I'll ask you to start, what the impact has been of a really large scale operation that, as I said, been going on for a month now.
So, Tom, you're right, and actually, this is a new page in our relations with the region. And to quote an old Neil Young song, it should have been done long ago. The Houthis, for over a year and a half, have managed to significantly affect international commerce through the Suez Canal. We say the Bab el Mandeb, but we're really talking about the Suez Canal. And this is actually a pretty important interest for Americans, not because we're pulling Europe's chestnuts out of the fire or because we're trying to help other people, but because we are first and last a maritime nation. We depend on commerce on the global commons. This is an important thing for us. And I'm glad to see that we've actually begun to do this. We've had the capability to do it for some time, but we have lacked the political will to do it. Now we do have the political will to act, and the campaign's just beginning. I think this is not something that's going to happen in a week or 2 weeks. But we do have the ability, in my judgment, Tom, to create one or two things there. Either we inflict enough pain on the Houthis so that they stop. That would be achieving deterrence. That would probably be the preferred state. Or failing that, we simply destroy their capability to conduct these kinds of operations against ships in the Red Sea. That will be a more difficult proposition, yet it remains within our capabilities to do that. And difficult to know right now which path will ultimately go down, but I think this is a long overdue reaction to a festering problem that, frankly, the last administration chose to largely ignore.
And from a military standpoint, General, can you help the audience understand? Because there were periodic, I guess, I'll let you decide how to characterize them, strikes by the Biden administration. We read about those with some frequency. What is quantitatively, militarily different from what we've seen over the past month?
Sure. So under the last administration, our strikes were telegraphed, carefully choreographed, and limited to such a degree that, frankly, they were ephemeral and had little direct impact on the Houthis. The strikes that you see going on now are both broader and deeper, striking at core Houthi capabilities and at Houthi leadership, something that we scrupulously refused to do in the last administration. So this is an important and different approach. This campaign is going to go after where they make their weapons, where they store their weapons, how they surveil our ships, the places where they make decisions. And all of those things are now on the table and are being struck. And many of those things are frankly not on the table, or at least if they were on the table, decisions were made not to strike them under the previous administration. All of this now is a widening of the aperture.
The future of national security is here. Introducing the Cipher Brief's NatSec Edge Conference, June 5th through 6th, 2025 in Austin, Texas. Join leaders from intelligence, defense, private industry, and investment as they explore the innovations shaping tomorrow's world. Gain critical insights, connect with top minds, and shape the future of security in an interconnected world. Don't just witness the future, be a part of it. Secure your spot now at natsekedge.com.
So I mentioned in the open, General, that there are sort of seemingly very different assessments, which maybe isn't a big surprise. The president saying, again, that the Houthis have been decimated by these strikes. there have been several reports at the Pentagon and in private briefings to members of Congress and so forth say limited success so far. Is it possible that both are sort of true, that done a lot of damage, but a lot of this is a group that has its arsenal has strengthened and its abilities have as well over the years, and so just you may need to do much more?
Sure. Let's just again by saying again, Tom, a year and a half ago, we could have nipped this in the bud. It's a different and more manageable problem. Typically, in cases like this, if you let it continue to grow, you'll have a much larger problem, which is what this administration now confronts. So I think actually we're having success. There's a ways to go yet, but I think we're on the right path. But here's the thing to remember. People say, well, how are you going to have effect against the Houthi? We are not trying to reshape Houthi society. We're not trying to change the way they govern. What we're trying to do is prevent them from launching relatively high technology missiles, drones, and cruise missiles against maritime shipping in the Bab el-Mandeb and in the Red Sea. That requires, on their part, the use of electronics and other things that give signatures. We are better suited to fight this kind of campaign. This is not a counterinsurgency campaign. This is a campaign to prevent them from launching these high-tech systems. We have the capability to do it. Again, you're not going to have success, as we would say, in one period of darkness, but we are on the right path here.
Okay. There have been many reports about the cost of this, and I guess it is what it is, perhaps, but $200 billion was the figure the Pentagon put out a couple of weeks ago now. And just in terms of the cost of the munitions, other reports suggest it's close to $1 billion. And here's a quote from the New York Times report. So many precision munitions are being used, especially advanced long-range ones, that some Pentagon contingency planners are growing concerned about overall Navy stocks and implications for any situation in which the U.S. would have to ward off an attempted invasion of Taiwan by China. What do you think of that? Is it an apple and an orange thing? What's your reaction?
I think it's a reasonable concern, and I think they're right to point that out. I think it's something we do need to weigh. But I go back to the point that if we solved this problem earlier, we would not have to use these munitions at the scope and scale we're using them now. Bad place because we chose to defer this problem, to kick it down the road. Now the problem has come due, and it's become very expensively due, I might add, Tom.
Yeah. Speaking of costs or risks, a very different one, and this is not a military question, but not surprisingly, I suppose, given that, as you pointed out, this mission is going after leadership as well as launch sites and military equipment and so forth. There have been various reports between 100 and 200 civilians killed in the strikes. And Yemen, as you know, has been, and not just with the Houthis, but a haven, pick your word, for other militants and jihadists before. How much of a concern is that, as particularly if this goes on for months?
I think it is a concern, and I think that the Joint Force, Central Command, will work very hard to minimize collateral civilian casualties as we pursue this campaign. I think we should also expect the Houthis to maximize the opportunity for collateral damage to civilians. They'll hide in mosques. They'll hide in locations where there are human shields. That's a technique we've seen used across the region by terrorist groups of this type. So they will try to maximize that. We will work very hard to minimize it. Look, there are going to be civilian casualties as we pursue this operation. We'll work very hard to minimize those, but we still have to go after these targets.
And then last question on this, General. You said a moment ago that, you do it and you've succeeded. I think you said when they stop. Is that, I take it with this group and their supporters, a pledge to stop probably wouldn't do the trick. It's a long way of saying, how will Central Command and the Pentagon know that, to use a phrase that I guess has gone out of vogue, mission is accomplished?
Sure, I think there'll be empirical evidence of that when the attacks stop, when they're unable to do it. And we will have ways to look at that and gauge that. But you're right, either the attacks continue or the attacks don't continue. And that'll be pretty clear evidence of our ability to affect this campaign.
Okay, I wanted to turn in the time we have left, General, to Iran. Beyond the fact that it supports the Houthis, tomorrow or this weekend, the U.S. and Iran are holding talks on the nuclear program, as you know, and a possible new deal to rein in that program. First of all, one assumes, or should we assume, that this issue that we've been talking about with the mission with the Houthis is going to be part of that conversation?
all roads on terror in the region lead to Tehran. The Houthis largely exist because of Iran. So clearly, I think you can't leave that out if you're having a discussion with them. But here's, I think, an important thing to understand. I think other observers in the past have let the possibility of Iranian escalation based on an attack on the Houthis sort of self-deter us from taking this kind of action. I think the risk of Iranian escalation is very small based on whatever we do to the Houthis. Iran's been laid bare over the last several months because of their inability to effectively attack Israel, the collapse of Lebanese Hezbollah, and of course the collapse of Syria, and their own inability to effectively defend Iranian airspace against highly successful Israeli attacks. All of these things militate, or all of these things argue for a weakened Iran, and one that will have to be very careful as it looks to find a way forward that doesn't involve regime change in Iran.
Right. And more broadly, I mean, you're not a diplomat, but you know this as well as many. Public statements from the president have made quite clear that his approach going into these conversations, whether they're direct or indirect or whatever transpires in Oman, it seems to be along the lines of, you'd better take our deal or there will be military strikes, hell to pay, I think is his phrase. What would be on the table if the United States were to go down that route?
Sure. Well, first of all, we should require direct talks. We should not. The United States should not settle for indirect talks. I think we want to have direct talks, and I think we should require that without any preconditions, at all. So we'll see if that actually holds this weekend. That's what we understand is going to happen. I would certainly, if I were giving advice, that's the advice I'd give this administration: require that they meet with you face to face and without preconditions. So what are the things you could put on the table? Well, I think the Iranian nuclear program is clearly something that's on the table. The Israelis, I'm guessing, are going through their own calculus about whether or not to strike the Iranian nuclear program, which is now, again, uniquely vulnerable. We have a clear policy red line that Iran's not going to possess a nuclear weapon. There's no evidence right now that they're moving aggressively to cross that final line, but they're right up to it. So I think certainly the Iranian nuclear program is something that could be on the table. There are a variety of other targets in and around Iran that we could choose to strike to signal our concern over their inability to come to the table, should they choose not to do that. All of those, I'm sure, are being looked at very hard right now. As you know, Tom, we brought a second aircraft carrier into the theater. Who's in the theater, additional capabilities are flowing in. So what I think military commanders are trying to do is give President Trump options as he considers the way forward. But let me just finish my response by saying Iran responds to the use of force. They know and understand it. And for far too long, we have self-deterred by being unwilling to face Iran with this threat. I think now the time is different, and I think we're willing to do it, and I think it may actually lead to something.
And presumably a big, I mean, one sea change is maybe too strong, but big change since this was last a subject of any negotiations with the U.S. is whatever degradation has happened to Iranian air defenses, right, from the Israeli strikes. You and I talked about that last year. In that respect, Iran is and in others, a weaker participant at this table at the moment, right?
They are considerably weakened, and they know that. And remember, the highest objective of Iranian statecraft is regime preservation. They will be willing to make concessions, I would argue, in order to preserve the regime. And if the regime is directly threatened, and now may be the time to threaten the regime, then I think we could look for some movement.
And speaking of concessions or just approaches from the U.S. side, I was struck just reading a lot of, reports and things in the ether, private and public, over the last 24, 48 hours about the Oman meetings. There's a lot of language and concern, particularly from people who are hardline in the U.S. about Iran, that sounds just like the concerns that were expressed about Steve Witkoff and the others going to talk to the Kremlin, that, we're going to give away too much. Obviously, we're talking about apples and oranges, completely different situations. Would that be a concern of yours, not to single out Mr. Witkoff, but just that the pursuit and the wish for a deal might lead the United States to go soft in any of these areas?
Well, whatever our position and negotiating posture is going in, we should be aware of the Iranians. A former CENTCOM commander once said, the Iranians have never entered a war they could win or a negotiation they could lose. They're far better at negotiating than they are at fighting. And what they will try to do is string it out in time, bring in secondary considerations, use a wide variety of techniques to bog down the negotiations and freeze them while they try to rebuild their military capability. We should be resolute as we approach these negotiations. We should keep the stick very handy, even as you talk about carrots.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I said it's an apple and an orange. Your answer just there, General McKenzie, about the stringing out is exactly, as you probably know, what people say about Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. We got to leave it there. General Frank McKenzie, former head of Central Command, we really appreciate your insights on the Houthi mission and also these upcoming talks on Iran. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. Great being with you as always.